Welcome to our weekly live stream recording of the M&A Zing, a podcast series devoted to acquisition entrepreneurs, search funds and holdco builders. This week, we're diving right into the first of our interviews with emerging searchers and established acquirers, and we're thrilled to have Florian Wilisch join us today. Florian leads Hamburg Ventures, which are currently deep in the process of acquiring a business. But his path here has been fascinating. After nearly a decade helping launch iconic products like the iPhone and Apple Music, he's managed hundreds of millions in revenue and spent another decade then building and scaling startups, culminating in selling his own e-commerce venture. And now he's applying that wealth of experience and innovation in digitisation to the world of entrepreneurship through acquisition. So Florian, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me.
It's our absolute pleasure. Thank you for finding the time in your busy search schedule to come and tell us about your journey and share that with our listeners. So I want to get started, if we can, with your background, and if you can give us a bit of a whistle-stop tour of your path to here. I mentioned there that you were with Apple during its period of explosive growth, and then you've also had significant time spent in the startup world. So you've seen both sides of the equation. But can you walk us through your journey and how these distinct experiences from like hyper-growth corporate to the scrappy startup have helped shape the skills you bring to the ETA world?
Yeah. So as you said, I was at Apple almost 10 years. Before that, I was actually also kind of in technology and marketing technology. Really, it was search engines. So the other big innovation, I guess, really before AI. That kind of changed the way we could do business and promote our businesses. And yeah, I guess, you know, often I get the question about why did you leave Apple? Because I was doing quite well there. I had a really great job, which I called the best job in the world, like working for Apple Music. But the thing is that I wanted to also be entrepreneurial and take all the decisions. In big companies, you do, you know, huge things, but you do a kind of a small thing of the huge things, and decisions take very long, etc. So then going into the entrepreneurial world did give me all of this exposure that I wanted, and I was able to learn so much that I wasn't able to learn, even though I was managing huge budgets and huge projects with insane amounts of users, etc. Actually, you know, being able to set your own price, to design the packaging, to even build a website for your own business, you learn so many things that were really incremental, I would say. And to your question, I guess that's really what I find so valuable now with ETA, and why I feel like I'm really in a good position, having seen these sort of, you know, how you want it to look eventually, but also the little scrappy stuff that you need to do in the beginning to get to things. So that combination, I think, it has been really useful.
Yeah, I think being able to see the activity of doing small bits of huge things, and then the other side of the coin of learning by doing, of just everything rests on your shoulders, and you have to get involved in the stuff that perhaps in a corporation you can delegate. You've clearly, though, chosen the latter, because ETA is often seen as the other roll your sleeves up and get stuck in, equivalent to the startup world. I'm interested by your background, because in our preamble you've mentioned that you come from a family of innovators. How did that influence your path here?
You know, I think that really. So my grandfather was a you know, what I call an inventor, really a mechanical engineer, we would say nowadays. And he worked in the railway industry and had some big patents there. My father then built a business that was basically a delivery service, was the first bike courier in Europe, very successful in Germany. And it's really quite interesting because he passed away in '92, so I hadn't been here to see, you know, what the world became. But when you think about what Uber is and Uber Eats and all that, it was kind of the same system that he was using. It was very innovative at that time to have your drivers be contractors and not be full-time employees. That's how he managed to scale that business, and that was in the 80s and 90s. So, we don't reinvent anything ever, I guess. But yeah, all that to say that I do think that when you have that in your family, it leaves a mark, and it leaves this sort of, you see what it could be like to have your own business and to make the decisions and to be creative in really so many ways. And that's what it did with me. And I really, from very young age, I always said I wanted to be an inventor. And really, what I understand now, what that means is I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to create things for people to use or to like,
Which was the world that you were around, and I guess felt very familiar to you as you were kind of perhaps hearing of your father's stories of building the business and going through the struggle and the hustle of bringing something to life, if you will. So there is an interesting correlation amongst successful search acquisition entrepreneurs who have come from families of entrepreneurship and innovation. So you're not alone there. But what specifically brought you to this wonderful new path of ETA then? What having done the corporate and done the starting from scratch, what has attracted you to buying?
Yeah, that's I think really interesting, and sort of, I guess, really this big boom of ETA that we see now, or at least it feels like that from the inside, because suddenly you see it everywhere.
Well, it's definitely a boom now, but still a long way to go to do a boom that echoes the venture boom, for example. That
exactly, but so this is exactly what I was going to say. So I was at Apple, always very interested in, innovation. Even within Apple, I worked in the App Store very early on, for example. So I was working with loads of startups there, really innovative revenue models as well, and stuff like that. So I was always into what is this, what is the new thing to do in businesses and all of that. But and that was also a reason why I then left and wanted to do my own thing and worked with startups, etc. However, all of that was always the startup world. It was always VC. It was always angel, right? And I kind of was under the impression that was the two options there were. Either you go corporate or you build your own startup. And then I suddenly, excuse me?
That's what the system would like you to believe,
Yes, exactly. And so as I then suddenly discovered that, it was possible to buy someone else's business that had a foundation that was profitable already, and that then you could innovate from there. That really suited my situation at that moment much more. I still think that, for some people, and especially when you're younger, startups make a lot of sense. And if you want hyper growth, if you think you want to be a billionaire, all of that, it's probably great to do startups. But it doesn't matter how often we tell people, but the success in the startup world is so small, the percentage of people that manage to make a success of their business, a success worth talking about at least. And so it's incredibly hard. And so then having this middle ground as a person, I've got two young children now. I'm not 25 anymore. So actually, for me, it is a really good middle ground to think I can take a successful business that has done well, but in most of the cases, systems and loads of things are quite old in the businesses that I look at, and I can go in there with my experience and make it more modern and suddenly be on a really great scale while being independent, because that was always the thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get into that independence, shall we? Let's get into the current activity with Hamburg Ventures, and particularly the thesis that you have. Seems that you are looking at targets through the lenses of innovation and digitisation. So could you unpack that for us? What does that practically look like when you're evaluating your potential acquisition targets?
Yeah, the reason I word it in that way is that being in this world of ETA now, I see who's around me, and a lot of people for now, I mean, there's more and more sort of unconventional backgrounds as well that come in. But what I see a lot is people that have a finance background, people that have a management consulting background. And I think it's quite obvious what these people can bring to a small business that gets sold. They have very clear skills that are applicable to almost every business, really. So I completely understand that. My background is just different. I'm an operator. I've got marketing. I've got this innovation and digitization background. So that's what I know, and so that's also how I look at any company that I look at. And really, in practice, what that means, it's I can't really sort of generalize, but really what it means is that I very quickly, usually when I talk to an owner, I very quickly find out whether I think there's opportunities that I can unlock or not. And that is important to me. I don't just want to buy a business because the business is great, but I don't really know what I'll do in it. I need to be able straight away to have a vision and see like, oh, this thing you can do with the product. Here's some growth opportunities. I know how to unlock those and all of that. So that's what I mean when I say I look at it in terms of innovation and digitization. These are the things.
Which is great, because the ex-PE guys and girls are probably looking at it from a financial engineering as a first principle, whereas you're working from the other angle, I think, which they end up in the same place, but you're practically looking at the operation, the product, where you can tangibly drive value creation in order for that to play out in the spreadsheet and in the P&L.
And I do need.
Sorry, go ahead.
I guess what I was going to say, that I do need also to. I needed to learn a lot of the more financial things, etc. And I'm obviously not at all at the level where a lot of others are, because it's just not my background. But like you say, there is actually this whole other angle that is really relevant. And to talk to something that might come up a bit more in this conversation, owners actually really connect with that, because a lot of these owners, they are doers. They have built a business not because they've got a business degree or something. They've just done their product and it became big, and now they make a couple million with it, and that's that. But they just know the day-to-day stuff. They are usually not that educated financially, etc. So when I come and I tell them about like, oh, look, we can grow the business here, or we should do marketing this way, they usually, while they don't always, they don't always know how to do it themselves, they often felt like, yes, that's what we want. That's exactly what we were trying to achieve all this time, etc. So it's quite good for connection.
Absolutely. Well, the product and the customers and the market, they're all tangible to the owner, to the seller. That's what they've lived and breathed. It's perhaps less abstract than the spreadsheets are. Oftentimes these are practical people that delegate the financial alchemy to someone else. And so have you found that it's helped you resonate and connect and actually get more quickly to meaningful trust-based relationships with these sellers where you have connected on product and market?
Yes, no, exactly. That's exactly what I mean. We speak the same language, and I've even been told more than once that, oh, it's nice to be talking to someone about something else than the numbers, because I asked some things about the numbers, some basics, but like I say, for me, it's not actually, if there's a healthy EBITDA and I think, my cost and maybe some costs that I want to build into the business will work out, then I'm kind of fine with the finances. Then I'm like, okay, we'll figure that out. I need to know that I can grow the business. That's what I care about.
Yeah, and the growth comes through serving customers very well with excellent products in markets where there's an opportunity to grow. Like that will look after the numbers if you get that bit right, one would hope. Great. Well, so what's your search journey been like up to this point? We'll probably get in a second into your current sort of. We know that you're knee deep in a deal at the moment, and I don't want you to talk too much to that while it's in motion. But what's the journey been like? You start searching. How has the process gone up to now?
Yeah, so I actually, well, to say up front, I think I'm maybe a bit slower than some. It is almost by design. I just know how I function, and there's no. I need to understand things properly to feel comfortable doing them. That's true in business. It's also true in this completely new process for me. So when I discovered search or ETA, I actually took about 3 months where I said, okay, that was up to basically January 24. I said, these months I will just spend learning. I will just read, look at all the things that I can find and just educate myself, so that then I am confident that I can talk to an owner and then kind of look semi-serious. So that's what I did. And then in January 24, I started searching. Now that's already, scarily long when I look at the calendar now.
15 months of search so far. Yeah, not to put a
Yeah,
number on it for you.
exactly. So thank you. It's something I try not to think about, because I actually quite quickly got into contact with 2 deals about 4 months in. I was talking to 2 different businesses that became pretty serious, and with both of them, I was actually talking very deeply about terms, about pricing. We were in agreement, so we were very close to moving forward into the next step. And both of those then kind of fell through within the same week. In September, 24, that was. And that was kind of hard, but so just to explain, they both were dipping in revenue. One lost a big client, and then decided that he wanted to gain that revenue again, so that he could actually get the price that he was asking for. So he left. The other person just was sticking with their price, and I was saying, I can't justify that price while your revenue is decreasing. So we agreed not to go forward. That was really hard, but it actually was not as hard as I expected. And I think part of that was that I had heard this story so many times before from other searchers saying like, oh, I had X amount of deals fall through before I managed to close my deal. And I guess I was hoping while I was in those that I would be able to close something within, less than a year. But I always also saw the statistics from the Stanford study and all of that say that, the average takes, I don't know, 1.5 years or between 1 and 2 years is not uncommon. And so then I thought, okay, well, that's how it is. I then managed to find another deal, the one that I'm in right now, quite quickly after the one that I think in October, that was 24. But then starts this whole dance that it just takes ages. Everything takes ages, and especially in the beginning when sellers don't completely trust you. They are in this process, but they've spoken to other people so much, and they just don't really answer quickly. Sometimes I needed 2 weeks to get answers. Anyways, so that all meant that we got to we signed heads of terms in early January 25, and we wanted to close yesterday. Unfortunately, I had a lender that was going to support the deal, and they fell through in February. So now I'm looking for kind of either restructuring or finding another lender for this deal. So that's my journey up and down.
You've had your fair share of adversity along the road, but like you say, quite comparable to many others in terms of trying to align all of the planets in order to make the deal come to fruition.
Exactly.
Nice to hear that you weren't thrown off your stride and that it didn't destroy your confidence in proceeding and finding the next opportunity. Like those 2 Must have been a pretty sad week to see both of them go up in smoke. But what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And as I always say, it's off until it's on. And there's just like conceiving children and bringing them into the world. There's so many things that have to go right in order for the process to complete. So glad that you've got one underway, but without speaking too much to anything that's going to be confidential, perhaps you could speak to what particularly happened with the lender. You mentioned that they withdrew. Was that their change of appetite, or is it something to do with their availability of funds?
It's one of these things, I guess we'll never know. But one interesting thing that happened was that just about a week or so before they said that they didn't have too much appetite anymore, the manager within the lender who had been advocating for my deal, as you know, they have the people that look at your deal initially, and they then take it to a group of group of people that will agree altogether whether they do it or not. And this guy, I had spoken with him on the phone once, and he said that he was actually had some of the products that this company sells, which it's quite it's a consumer product and fairly specific. So I think that there might have been that got his interest in it and wanting to champion it. But then he left the company. And when I heard that news, I said to my debt broker, like, "Ooh, that feels like this is not going to be good." And sure enough, a week later, I was informed that they weren't interested anymore. So I don't know if that would ever work, if it would ever have gone to the end. But ultimately, what they say is they don't like B2C particularly, never. But they were still considering this business. What they are mainly concerned about is, as they call it, infrastructure. There isn't many systems in place. There isn't really second-tier management yet, even though the sellers are not leaving, they are staying. But the lenders are concerned about that. So it's kind of standard stuff.
Can you speak to the size of the business? Because it'd be interesting to sort of correlate in terms of size. To the 500,000 or something in terms of its revenues, or along those sort of lines, because it sounds to me like the lender hasn't necessarily calibrated to what you're bringing to the table in terms of your willingness to operate the company and the fact that you want to improve the systems to generate upside.
No, exactly. But so everything that I've named are the opportunities, and if they weren't there, then I don't even know whether I would consider the business.
Yeah.
That goes to what I was saying earlier. I only am interested in businesses where I see opportunities where I can make a difference on day one, right? So,
but is it a super small business, or is it a modest size business?
It's about 2 million in revenue. Not huge revenue. It's got very good margins though. That makes it very interesting.
And is this lender familiar with the acquisition entrepreneurship
yes
paradigm? I mean, have they lent on other deals like this?
Yeah, they are a known entity in this world. But I knew when I was going into it that all of them, or the 4, 5, 6 that we all know in the UK, they all want B2B businesses. They want top quality of earnings and all of that. And this type of company is just not in that world. But I want to kind of mention one thing that I think is quite important for me, actually, even though they fell through, again, I actually am kind of thankful to them, because I don't think that I would have gotten where I am with the sellers if it hadn't been, if I didn't have a lender that was seriously looking at the deal and to say, look, I've got a lender, let's do the heads of terms, etc. Now, I now need to figure it out and etc. But I think we can find a solution. And so yeah, it's so interesting. Like even things that kind of don't go your way sometimes are actually good, like things that helped you in a different way than you maybe expected.
Yeah. I'd love to hear a bit more about. You mentioned you went via a debt broker. How have you found that experience?
Oh, I've got that's it's an episode of its own. Um, in a nutshell, I've had a lot of bad experiences with debt brokers. In general, I find them, so sorry for all the ones that are listening, but I find that a lot of them are not very kind and are a bit high on their sort of gatekeeper position. Because people like me, we don't have the contacts, we maybe don't even have the financial knowledge as some others might have, etc. So you sometimes really rely on someone like this to open some doors and to make it happen.
Well, that's their purpose. Yeah.
That's their purpose, yes, but apparently, I mean, the business must be doing okay because, like I say, I've had quite a few experiences where that were just simply unpleasant. Just yesterday, I had a conversation that, was not particularly great. But I found one person who found me this as well, who's been really decent, and we have a good relationship. And even as this deal didn't work out, there was something we had to sort of bit of a disagreement on, but we found a way to get together again, and that I really appreciate that. I don't forget that kind of stuff.
Hanging in there with you is definitely a test of merit, I would say. Of course, a lot of their fee is contingent on you actually being able to, secure the funds, and so they should stay in there. They're incentivized to. But I've noticed there are, a number of brokers for commercial finance that charge a nice, healthy fee up front, and maybe are less concerned about the contingent part, and they're normally in the wind at that moment when you really need them, when one particular opportunity has fallen apart and they need to go again.
No, exactly.
Well, there's good money out there for good businesses, and I'm sure the one you've selected, if the margins are healthy and it's got growth potential, there'll be a deal to be done. But can we talk a little bit about your sourcing strategy, how you came by these businesses, given that your focus is on innovation and digitisation? I'd love to know a bit more about the methods you found most productive and effective for sourcing candidates.
Yeah. So short answer, it's brokers, which I don't think is ideal for all the reasons that everyone knows. You are in competition with other people. They are usually more educated through the broker, and therefore prices can be a bit higher, etc., etc. However, they also bring according benefits, which is they are educated about what the process might look like and what is a realistic price and what may not be a realistic price, what is a normal structure or an acceptable structure versus what is not an acceptable structure. Because when you contact people cold, they will all tell you that their business is worth 10x, and they want all the money in a suitcase on their desk. And so those conversations
can be buying.
No, but I mean that is sometimes the expectation of some people that have not,
I know. I get
it. Taken the time to understand how it works. But
the broker's telling you what's normal and acceptable, though. Is that through the lens of what's normal and acceptable for their client or for their fee? Or is it what's normal and acceptable in the market for people that are maybe less prepared?
Well, for me, so look, company brokers is a little bit similar. There's many people that don't like company brokers and that don't have great things to say about them. I have found a couple of companies that I'm very happy with, and I know that actually those same names come up in the ones that others hate. So I don't know why, but I have. I've managed to deal with these companies very well. Of the 3 deals that I have been talking about in this podcast, 2 of them come through the same broker company, and one was another one. But so I find that they are being reasonable. Oh, maybe I am making great offers. I don't know, but I have found that they have been a good help for me often, certainly in the beginning, to get sellers to sort of accept my position and to make this back and forth thing. So
That's
yeah,
really great that they're realistic and advocating for, you know, both the buyer and the seller to find an accommodation. That's ultimately the brief. That's what they should be doing. But yeah, you
exactly.
hear stories about, and I've been on receiving end of a few, where it's very much the other way. And so I'm glad there's balanced ones. I've certainly worked with a number that are really balanced and mature and practical and want to get a solution done. And so yes, it's good that they're in your camp. The funding model, just remind me, with Hamburg Ventures, are you did you set out to be self-funded or traditional search?
Yeah, I self-funded because I could. So, then I feel like why not? That being said, obviously, in the calculations, it was more like, yeah, I'll take a year, not so much I'll take 2 years. So now I'm starting to sweat a little bit.
Does that mean you've looking for equity gap funding in addition to the
yes, I will. So yeah, this rough structure that I'm usually looking for is a LBO plus some equity, and that has actually always worked quite well with sellers because it means that they get money up front, so you can defer some of it, but not too much, and they kind of like that.
Yeah, I agree. And you've been quite open there about the challenges of trying to raise finance for a B2C model. What other hurdles have you faced? Perhaps you could talk a bit about maybe the financing environment, the lending and equity investing environment that you've encountered on this journey.
Yeah, I mean, speaking about that story about the lender dropping out, etc., that is certainly the major hurdle I've had. The fact that, and we were talking a little bit on our pre-call about that as well, that what I see really is that all the lenders want the same thing. They want B2B businesses with recurring revenue, contracted revenue, and that's it, really. If anything kind of goes out of that lens, then they're not so interested. I actually, by now, I think there's a huge opportunity here. This is me thinking forward, but I'm already thinking like, if I make a deal and I manage to make some money on my deal, etc., I'm coming back and I'm going into that niche in like offering some, because then you can pick all the top deals in B2C. You don't need to take the bad ones, but I've seen really great deals. Now, yes, it is higher risk than a B2B business, but I just that's how my mind works. But I cannot accept that there's just like great businesses that won't be able to get sold just because they like of what they sell or how their revenue model is.
Market failure. It's more evidence of the sort of barriers in general to SMB succession M&A is that like there is a very narrow mold, very narrow model that attracts all of the money, and if you aren't in that, then your options are much more limited. But it's the fear and greed index again. The Warren Buffett kind of, when everybody's fearful, be greedy. It creates opportunities in that underserved part of the market. So I can see your attraction to it.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean that has really been pretty frustrating, and obviously then sometimes there's a disconnect with sellers understanding that, because there's solutions if the sellers understand that it can't be financed, not because of me, but like no one will be able to finance their business. Then they can be much more flexible, but for that they must really understand that.
And you take them on a journey. I guess you have to, it's a chastening experience of realizing that money doesn't just rain from the sky, and actually that there isn't an optimal deal on offer for everybody. So yes, that's quite nice that you can get them to come to a view whereby they need to bear some of the risk. But in terms of how you've been perhaps trying to raise money by alternative means, I mean, have you found speaking to equity investors, have you felt the state of the market is in terms of availability of capital there?
Yeah, so I'm currently talking to investors. Nothing. I mean, some initial ones were interested, etc. Again, I tried to make a an interesting deal for them with preferred equity, which again I think that if I'm on the other side at some point, this is just a great thing to do. What I have noticed though is that what seems to be happening is that on one hand you have banks and sort of institutional lenders. Then you have PE, which kind of would maybe talk to our market, but they tend to just do bigger deals. And then you have small investors or VC firms, so angels and VCs, but they all want startups, and they don't want a business that actually makes money. Which is just mind blowing to me. There's like this hole where people don't want to put their money. So what I'm trying to do to some extent is actually to contact angel investors and try to explain to them, look, you are willing to put your money into these super risky things. I'm offering you a business that works, it exists, and risk is so much lower. And I'm pretty much guaranteeing you a return. So, why don't you come on board? But again, I feel like there's such a market opportunity there for to make people understand that there's a safer way of investing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Florian. That we are at the vanguard of a movement. I've said it numerous times before, but I'll say it again for those listening for the first time. That the smart money is already shifting from venture, where the returns have not delivered on their promise, to the established buyout market, the micro cap PE that we're in and we're serving. And it's going to be like every movement, every asset class. It's slow, and then everything all at once, and that's when it will be boom time and saturation. But maybe a little bit too late if we don't encourage that transition of capital sooner, because the sort of baby boomer opportunity is really at its high point for the next decade, or slightly less. So we hope that people move in number more quickly and help get projects like yours over the line. Can we talk about the sort of things you've learned on your journey, beyond the specific deal challenges? What's been the steepest learning curve for you coming into this M&A world?
I mean, so much. I don't even know if I can, and that is exactly why I love that I'm doing this. My wife regularly questions me and is like, what are you doing in that room? Like, she sees me over a year now locked up in here and kind of not being able to show for much. And she's like, are you sure you want to do that? And what I try to explain to her is that it's really rewarding for me to learn so much. So that is the finance aspect, that now suddenly I've got a much better understanding of financially how businesses work, but also the fact of, all these systems and things that we learn, human things, of how to connect with sellers and therefore how to connect with people and make them trust you enough that they will give you their life's work. But trust you enough to, they make that decision with one person, not with a lot, and you need to be that person. And so I find that really super interesting and very, very rewarding. Aside from obviously the business aspect, which I always love to think about, what could we do with this business? What could we do with that business? So.
But again, it's great traits for entrepreneurialism that you are excited by stepping out adjacent to your comfort zone and expanding your knowledge and encountering new challenges and rising to new opportunities. So that's great. And I can certainly appreciate that. If you were to reflect on your ETA journey to date, from that moment that you initially made the decision to start becoming a searcher, and then navigating the sort of lending hurdles and the failed deals, what would you do differently if you were starting over, armed with that knowledge? What would you tell your 15 month ago self now?
You know, it's always kind of tempting to look back and say, like, I should have gone faster. I think that that's one of the things that I just always feel like, oh, all of that. I just need to make things happen quicker. Um, but as I was saying earlier, it's also a little bit like who I am. I just go the speed I go. But it's true that I am a person. I need to like keep myself like give myself deadlines to so that things move ahead. So that is really one of the major things. And you do control speed to some extent. Now it's a balance, especially with sellers. You don't want to be like pushing them when they're not ready to answer. Like just chase them. That's not going to work. So it's a balance, but I guess that's a real art in itself, is being able to keep the deal going as fast as it can without breaking it, you know?
Yeah, exactly right. And is that similar to the sort of advice you would give to others? I mean, if you were uh, advising people that were setting out for the first time, I'm particularly intrigued because in our preamble, you'd mentioned that the process of searching was more mentally taxing than you had thought it would be when you set out. So I'm interested in your methods for coping with that, and for resilience, and maybe what you could give as advice to others about, treading on those inevitable landmines and how to cope with them.
Um, I mean, I think the first thing that I want to tell people is that they can do it. On the other hand, I also always say, like, be aware of what you can and what you can't do, or rather, what are you good at? Obviously, there's a lot of people selling things in this market, and they now tell everyone that they can all do it and they don't need any money and blah 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 blah. I think you need to be careful with that. I think you need to really sit down and think, who am I? Am I able to do this, etc. If you're someone who is good at taking direction and executing and all of that, maybe this is not the best thing. And you don't need to, like, not everyone needs to be doing the same thing. But if you do think that you can lead a business, if you have got some business acumen and you understand that, I think that then it's very possible for people to do this. And there's many different ways of doing it. I also standing on the shoulders of people that have done it before me and that have been kind enough to talk to me, to just give me the impression that I can do that, that it's not sort of outside of my my realm. There still is people that try to make you believe that, but if you are having enough conversations, then you notice that there's much more that are actually completely comfortable with you doing it than there are not. So, the debt brokers are examples of, they love to make you feel like you have no idea what you're talking about. And that's, I think it's a shame. Again, I don't know what the strategy is there, but I've had so many people that often were like me just a couple of years before, and they are now helping people like me to just go through the stuff. So that's something I really love. But I must say that both British and Americans as well, to an extent, just culturally are so much more open to people like me trying new things, and they will help, and as a general rule. So that's a shout out to the Anglo-Saxon world.
Oh, thanks for that. We haven't made our lives easy in the most recent decade, so I think we've invited a lot of criticism. But nice to know that we're doing something right with openness and supportiveness. But no, specifically, that's quite nucleated in this community. I think the search and acquisition entrepreneurship community is very collaborative, very supportive. There's lots of people who have done it and made it, that want to help others. And I always say, true leaders make new leaders. They go and reach down and pick people up, and I think that's a great quality that these are using in the businesses that they acquire, but also they're using in the community to to help that next generation. So yeah, that gets me out of bed in the morning. I really enjoy that. So if we were to fast forward 12 months, what does Hamburg Ventures look like? Where would you like to be?
Yeah, obviously, I would like to have a closed deal, and hopefully have made some progress within that company of having a good growth trajectory there. Yeah, that's the goal, and I'm still confident that will happen soon.
Yes, feels like the stars are gradually starting to align for you. So I hope that we can have another session once you've got your feet under the table at the acquired company, and yeah, we can then see how the first 3 to 6 months have gone for you in the big chair. I think you have a specific message, or a few different specific messages for the different groups of users and listeners within our community. So, ETA entrepreneurs, lenders, family offices, business owners, I imagine. So, do you have any particular, rallying calls that you'd like to use this moment for?
So I think there's a couple of different things. I think for ETA entrepreneurs, one of the main things that I want to tell people, other than you can do it, is the story thing. I always talk about your story. In my case, it's one big thing is this Apple past and then entrepreneurial. I've managed to craft that and communicate it well, that it resonates with people. But I believe everyone has a story, and I think you really need to sit down and craft it and change it and sort of find your thing, because that has been what has given me the most confidence, actually, is that when I was going out in the beginning, I knew kind of what I was saying, and I could see that people were reacting well to it. So I think it's very powerful to work on your story, and that can be just a few lines, by the way. The other thing, obviously, I spoke about lending. So if anyone listens, that is a lender in one shape or another, maybe a family office or any other forms that I might not know of. I am obviously always interested in talking to people that can lend money for acquisitions. And I also believe, as I said, that there's a huge opportunity for you, not just with me, but with so many others. So I think, go and make it happen. And I guess one last thing, I don't know how many business owners listen to this, but I'm also always happy to talk to business owners about their business, about growth and innovation, and how we can make things happen. So I'm very happy to jump on a call there as well.
That sounds like valuable time spent with you, actually, Florian, regardless whether they were ready to sell their businesses yet. I think, getting your insights on product and process improvement could be quite a game changer for them and lead to good things. Really interested by your power of story piece there. And I think it's really sage advice to crystallize a kind of elevator pitch or a narrative about yourself that you can convey to people that really hit them with your origin story. I think that is very, very powerful, and it seems like you spent some good time. I mean, you've got a great story in provenance and heritage that you've come from anyway, so it's your problem is more which bits do you leave out.
Yeah. Yeah, but again, I do think that everyone has something they can tell, and that might also then define who you can talk to properly, but maybe that's helpful instead of talking to everyone. So
yeah, true. Narrowing down, finding your tribe with whom it will resonate.
Exactly.
So just before we wrap up, Florian, it's been fantastic, by the way, and thanks so much for your your candor. For listeners who want to follow your journey or learn more about Hamburg Ventures or connect with you directly, where can they find you online or otherwise?
So I'm on LinkedIn. My name is Florian Wilisch. That's Wilisch. Easy to find on LinkedIn, and hamburgventures.com as well. But I mean, that's a bit of a tiny website. So reach out, send me a message if you want to chat.
Do be respectful of Florian's time. Go with an ask, but as you can tell, he brings a lot of insight. So I'm sure it's time well spent. Well, thank you so much for sharing those insights with us today, Florian. It's been really wonderful hearing about your experiences, navigating the sort of complexities of challenges of search and how that's brought you to hopefully this deal that comes across the line with the right lender in tow. We wish you the absolute best of success with the future of Hamburg Ventures, and we will hold you to the promise you've made to come back and help find alternative funding for the B2C acquisitions that will happen behind you. So We hope to follow your progress and get you back to talk about your deals again in the future. To our listeners, of course, thank you so much for tuning in to the M&A Zing. We look forward to bringing you further interviews in the weeks ahead. But until next time, keep on crunching.
Thank you.